I want you to picture Papua New Guinea for a second, but not, the postcard version.
All
I
right.
don't want that distant satellite view where it's all just this peaceful, perfect blue and green marble floating in space. I want you to zoom in.
Right down to the canopy level.
Exactly. Zoom in until you can see the leaves, because when you get that close, you realize green isn't just one thing. It's an absolute riot of biology.
You've got these ancient rainforests, coral reefs, incredible mountain ranges. It's one of the most biologically rich places on the entire planet.
But, and this is the kicker, it's also a place that is just incredibly rich in resources.
Oh, yeah. Copper, gold, timber, oil, gas, palm oil. It's a treasure chest.
And that creates a massive inherent conflict, doesn't it?
Hmm.
All of these things, the rare birds that exist nowhere else on Earth and the open pit mines that power our phones, they're fighting for the exact same square footage.
So the question is, how on earth do you govern a landscape that complex?
And maybe more importantly, how do you prove you're doing it?
Yes. How do you prove to the international community that you aren't just selling off the rainforest to the highest bidder?
Especially now. I mean, in the context of the global climate crisis, trust us just doesn't work anymore. You can't just say, oh, the forest is fine.
You need proof. You need data. Verifiable data.
And that brings us to our focus for today. We're doing a deep dive into a stack of documents about the PNG Forest and Land Use Monitoring Geo-Portal.
I know Geo-Portal sounds incredibly dry.
It sounds like a dusty government form, but reading through this, it's actually kind of a god mode for the country's entire ecosystem.
It really is. It's like the central nervous system for their national forest monitoring system. It's an attempt to put every single competing interest on one single interactive map.
Conservation, mining, logging, agriculture, all of it.
All of it.
And our mission today is to figure out if it actually works. We're basing this on the official Introduction to the Portal document from PNG's Climate Change and Development Authority and the Forest Authority.
So we're looking at the tech, the politics, and the sheer amount of data this thing churns out.
But before we open up the map, we have to understand the stakes. Why does PNG even need a high-tech portal like this? It all comes down to an acronym we hear all the time. REDD plus C.
REDD plus E. Okay, let's unpack that.
Reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation?
Correct. And the plus is crucial. It adds in conservation, sustainable management, enhancing forest carbon stocks.
So the basic deal is, the world tells developing nations, if you keep your forests standing, we will pay you.
Because those trees are locking up carbon that would otherwise be cooking the planet. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch. You have to prove the carbon is actually still there.
You need receipts. And in the UN framework, there are two ways to handle this data. One is called MRV.
Measurement, reporting, and verification, which the source material describes as the real heavy lifting.
Think of MRV as the audit. It's for the scientists and the bureaucrats. It's dense, it's slow, and it's incredibly precise. But the second function, and this is what the portal is all about, is monitoring.
I liked the distinction the document made. It called monitoring the watching function.
Exactly. If MRV is the annual audit, monitoring is the live security camera feed. It's about the enhanced transparency framework under the Paris Agreement.
So it's not just for the UN.
No, the goal is to make the data accessible to the public, to stakeholders, NGOs, to the people who actually live in the forest.
So there's nowhere to hide. You can't fudge the numbers in a report if the satellite map shows a giant new hole in the forest.
That's the ambition. And it's been a long road. The docs mentioned this actually started back in 2017 with an earlier version.
The PNG REDD Plus and Forest Monitoring Web Portal.
Yeah.
Launched by the Prime Minister, so it's a big deal.
A huge deal. But tech ages like milk, right?
A web portal from 2017 might as well be from the Stone Age.
And that's what the source notes. The operating systems were outdated. The WebGIS versions were falling behind. So what we're looking at today is the upgrade.
A new tech stack, new capabilities. It's not just a brochure anymore. It's a functional daily tool.
Okay, so let's boot this thing up.
Because when I looked at the documentation describing the interface, I was honestly a little overwhelmed. It's not just a map of trees. It is a supermarket of data.
It is incredibly comprehensive. The source lists 12 different information tabs.
I don't want to just read a list, though. I think it's more interesting to group them because they tell a story.
Yeah.
Let's start with what I'm calling the science layers. This is the data that justifies the REDD plus payments.
Okay, so under the Climate Change tab, you have the foundation, the PNG Land Use Map from 2015.
This divides the whole country into 8 classes of land use: forest, cropland, wetlands, settlement, you name it.
But the real heavy hitter, the one that matters for the money, is under the Mitigation RED Plus tab.
This is where it gets technical. There's a layer called above-ground biomass carbon.
And this is vital. In the old days, you might just say, this area is forest. But not all forests are created equal, right? A dense primary rainforest holds way more carbon than, say, a sparse secondary forest.
And this layer shows that carbon density at 30-meter resolution.
30 meters.
Wait, hold on. 30 liters is about the size of a basketball court?
Roughly, yeah. Maybe a little bigger.
So across a country bigger than California, they are estimating the weight of the carbon in the trees for every single basketball court-size square.
That's the level of granularity you need if you want to trade carbon credits effectively. You have to know exactly what you're selling.
And speaking of selling, the portal also tracks specific projects. The source highlights the April Salume REDD project.
That's a big one. It protects over 600,000 hectares.
The NIHD Topayo REDD Plus project is in there too.
Right, and these are active projects where money is changing hands based on those trees staying standing.
Yeah.
The portal lets you see their exact boundaries.
So you can verify they aren't, logging inside the protected zone.
Precisely. There was another interesting layer in there, the HCV probability map.
Right. High conservation value. What is that about?
Well, it's fascinating. It's trying to predict value before a human even sets foot there. It helps smallholders, local farmers, assess if a patch of land has high biological or cultural significance before they clear it.
So that's the science. That's the green part of the map. Now I want to overlay the gray part, the industry. I call this group of layers the clash.
And this is where the transparency really bites. Because usually this data is siloed, it's kept in different buildings, different servers.
The forestry department has their map, the mining department has theirs, and they never talk to each other.
Exactly. This portal forces them onto the same screen. You have the Forestry tab,
which shows logging concessions.
both expired and operational. You can see the actual polygons on the map, where logging companies have a legal right to harvest.
And right next to that, you have the deforestation and forest degradation layers.
From 2001 to 2015.
So you can visually check their work. You can say, here's the line where they were allowed to cut. And here's the satellite data of where trees actually disappeared.
And if the deforestation spills over the line, everyone can see it. It's undeniable.
Then you add the mining tab. This one felt heavy to me. You've got exploration licenses, but also the big ones. Special mining leases, SMLs.
And alluvial mining leases, which are often smaller river operations, but they can be incredibly destructive to those ecosystems.
And agriculture. The agriculture tab lists the giants. New Britain Palm Oil Limited NBPOL. It shows their estates, their mills.
Even their smallholders. Now, just think about the power of this for a moment.
Okay.
Imagine you're a planner in Port Moresby. In the past, you might issue a mining lease without realizing it overlaps with a proposed conservation area.
Because you literally didn't have the other mat.
You didn't have it. Or you approve a palm oil estate that's pushing into a high-carbon stock forest because that data just wasn't on your desk.
This portal removes that ambiguity. You can physically see if a proposed protected area is sitting right underneath a special mining lease.
The conflict is rendered in bright colors right on your screen. You can't claim ignorance anymore.
It's like having X-ray vision for land politics. But speaking of X-rays, let's talk about the lasers.
I had a feeling you'd bring up the space lasers.
I mean, come on. The Global Forest Change tab mentions something called GEDI, and when I looked it up, it's basically NASA shooting lasers at trees from space.
Essentially, yes. GEI stands for Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation. It's a LiDAR instrument on the International Space Station.
LiDAR is what self-driving cars used to see, right?
It's the same principle, but on a massive scale. It fires laser pulses down at the Earth. By measuring how long it takes for the light to bounce back from the top of the canopy versus the ground, it can determine the height of the trees.
That is mind-blowing. So we have a layer on this website accessible to anyone that shows the tree cover height 2019 based on data from the ISS.
It is incredible tech, and it's not just for the cool factor. Knowing tree height is crucial for calculating that biomass we talked about.
It connects the physics to the finance.
It really does, and they're combining that with other global data sets. They have the Global Mangrove Watch.
Why are mangroves separate from other forests?
Well, mangroves are a unique ecosystem. They are incredibly efficient at storing blue carbon, and they are vital for coastal protection. They stop the land from washing away.
Which brings us to the risk management aspect, the Adaptation DRR tab.
DRR, Disaster Risk Reduction. This is where the portal becomes a humanitarian tool. It has layers for landslide risk reduction and soil erosion control.
So it creates a direct link between the forest and human safety.
Exactly. It shows how forests are physically holding the landscape together. If you see a steep slope with high rainfall, the map tells you if you cut the trees here, the risk of a landslide is extreme.
It's not just save the birds, it's save the village.
Although save the birds is definitely in there too. Did you see the biodiversity layers?
I did. This was my favorite part, just because of the name. There is a layer literally called Birds of Paradise Species Richness.
It uses a range size rarity index, basically mapping where the rarest, most unique species are concentrated.
But here is where it gets really interesting. There's another layer called accessibility.
Yes. That measures travel time to the nearest major city. How hard is it to get there?
And the source material points out that when you layer Birds of Paradise over accessibility, what do you see?
You see that the highest richness of these rare birds is usually in the areas that are the hardest to get to.
It's a stark visualization of how isolation enables survival.
It is. And when you see a planned road on the infrastructure layer cutting straight into a high rarity zone on the bird layer, well, the implication is obvious.
The map tells you exactly what is going to happen.
Okay, so we've geeked out on the layers. The carbon, the vines, the birds, the lasers.
What?
But who is actually running this brain?
Yeah, let's look under the hood.
Officially, the Climate Change and Development Authority, or CCDA, manages the portal. But, as the source emphasizes, they aren't generating all this data themselves. It's a massive collaboration.
I saw the list of acronyms. It's alphabet soup.
It really is. The PNG Forest Authority, TNGFA, the Conservation and Environment Protection Authority, CCVA, the Mineral Resources Authority, MRA.
And the private sector, too. NBPOL, the palm oil company, is feeding data in.
Yes. And just think about the logistics of that. Getting a government mining agency, a conservation agency, and a private palm oil company to all format their data to fit into one system, that is a diplomatic feat.
So what's the tech stack itself? I noticed they mentioned Ubuntu.
They built it on open source tools, which is really smart. They're running on Ubuntu 20.04 using GeoServer and GeoNode, and a system called TerraPNG to handle the satellite monitoring.
Why does open source matter here?
It means it's free to use and modify. They aren't on the hook for expensive license fees forever. PNG owns the system.
And they use something called Open Forest Collect Earth for the on-the-ground part.
Correct. That was for the National Forest Inventory pre-assessment. It lets people look at high-resolution imagery and ground truth, what the satellite thinks it sees.
A human check on the space lasers.
Exactly.
But there is a catch, a big limitation. I can go to the website, I can play with all the maps, but there is one button I cannot click.
The download button.
Right. The data sharing policy. Yeah. Why? If the goal is transparency, why can't I get the raw data?
It comes down to data sovereignty. The agencies, like the Mineral Resources Authority, are protective of their data sets. They're willing to let the public view the data.
But they want to keep custody of the source.
Exactly. So if you want the raw data for mining leases, you have to call the MRA directly. It's a compromise. They're giving you the visualization of the truth, but keeping the keys to the filing cabinet.
Fair enough. It's a big step forward, even if it's not total open access. So we have the what and the how. Now for the big question. So what? Why does this matter?
The so what is that this shifts the whole paradigm from reaction to planning. The source explicitly frames this as a planning tool.
How so? Walk me through a scenario.
Okay, imagine you're an investor. You want to develop a new cocoa plantation. In the old days, you might just look at a soil map, see good dirt, and send in the bulldozers.
Until 6 months later, you find out you're in a critical habitat or on land designated for a mining lease.
And you end up with protests, lawsuits, and lost money.
Right.
With the portal, you can do that due diligence from your desk. You can overlay the climatic data, the soil suitability, the conservation areas, the mining leases, the infrastructure. You can find the safe zones.
So it enables smart development.
Exactly. It's not about stopping all development. PNG needs economic growth. It's about putting it where it does the least damage.
There's a feature in the interface that I think symbolizes this perfectly, the transparency adjustment, the slider.
Yes. You can literally slide a bar to make one map fade into another.
You can take the road network layer and fade it over the deforestation layer.
And suddenly the correlation just pops out. You see the herringbone pattern of deforestation spreading out from the new road like cracks in a windshield.
It visualizes cause and effect in a way a spreadsheet never could. And the portal invites the public to talk back, right? There's a feedback function.
Yes. Users can verify data.
Yeah.
If a local landowner looks at the map and says, hey, that logging boundary is wrong, they're cutting on my land, they can flag it.
That's huge. It creates a potential for a crowdsourced system of checks and balances.
It empowers the people who actually live there.
So bringing this all together, we started with a landscape that was just too complex to manage blindly.
And we've arrived at a technological solution that tries to bring order to that chaos. We've moved from static paper maps to a dynamic, multi-agency system of truth.
For me, the biggest takeaway is about visibility. When you look at that screen with all those layers on the gold mines, the protected forests, the birds, you're not just seeing colors, you're seeing choices.
That is the key. This tool removes the excuse of ignorance. In the past, a minister or CEO could say, we didn't know that mine would impact that bird species.
We didn't know the village was there?
Exactly. But now, when you can see a logging road approaching a bird in paradise habitat from space with data from NASA lasers, management becomes a conscious choice.
If that habitat is destroyed, it wasn't an accident. It was a decision made in full view of the evidence.
It changes the definition of liability. You can't claim you were flying blind when you have a dashboard this good. It forces accountability.
So here's a thought to leave you with. The source calls this a planning tool, but I think it's also a behavior modification tool.
What do you mean?
Well, we know the government is watching, we know the NGOs are watching, but now this level of transparency is public on the web. Anyone can see it. How will that change the behavior of the extraction industries?
That is the big question.
If a mining company knows that the whole world can check their boundaries against satellite imagery in near real time, do they stop coloring outside the lines? Does surveillance create sustainability?
Or do they just find better ways to hide?
That's the cynical take.
It's the realistic question. But with tools like GEDI and real-time monitoring, hiding is getting much, much harder.
I guess we'll have to keep watching the map to find out. Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure.